But you couldn't pull this with Franco, could you? Franco's pretty smart.
Franco is pretty smart, but Franco is a child. And when it comes to the day of the contest, I'm his father. He comes to me for advices. So it's not that hard for me to give him the wrong advices.
Today, we ask the question, to keep or not to keep? In 2024, you will have the option, the ability to select 2 keepers. Sometimes I ask myself, have we gone too far? Are we too radical? Are we too extreme when it comes to the efforts to improve the league? Multiple changes in one season are a bit too much. It's a matter of degree, of course. It depends how important that original setting was to the league. If 4 to 5 things are changed, but they're not that important, then that doesn't matter. We all thought that the tight end position was going to be eliminated for the next season. Not true at all. My sources tell me that the tight end position will stay, and we are not adding a second flex position. So everything that I'm about to say is with that understanding. The unification of the divisions has been something that's come up recently. These changes, along with the adding or the addition of one more keeper, aren't too much. They're close. It's a bit close. If you'd like to do 3 keepers, I don't agree with you. And I only say that because I know where this league goes. If someone is given the opportunity to select more, they will take more. And in fact, 2 isn't official. This will be up to a vote before the 2024 season, but I know how this league works. I know that if you fucks are given the option to pick 2 or 1, you're going to choose 2. And if you're given the option to choose 3 over 2, you're going to do that. But I want to say that 33% of a lineup is far too much. I do mock drafts like some of you. It's the only proper way to prepare for a draft. Though with 2 keepers, it's already getting a bit constricted as far as giving you knowledge on what's about to happen for the draft. There's top 5, there's top 10 position players that are already going to be pigeonholed in this league that you're going to be seeing selected in the 2nd or 3rd round of most of these mock drafts. So it muddies the waters as far as what you're going to expect. It's not going to be very realistic. So I'd like to keep it to just 2. Thank you. But it is 2 keepers. Last year, the default for the 1 keeper was the 5th round, and now with the additional keeper, it's the 6th. So if you do not select a keeper a week before the draft, the default picks will be the 5th and 6th round. I'm not going to spend too much time on statistics because if I did, this would go on for way too long. So I'm just going to mention the 2 or 3, very few teams have more, possible selections that you could make. This is the advice that I'm handing down to you free of charge. Listen, you can thank me later. We're going to start with Big Papa Poop. Now, Big Papa Poop made the very wise decision this year to select one running back that was suspended and another who was in a contractual dispute with his team. I, of course, am talking about Jonathan Taylor and Alvin Kamara. Alvin Kamara was the 5th selection this year from J-Ray. He has 649 yards. You'd expect Alvin Kamara to have a lot more yards than that on the ground, though he has 462. So all-purpose yards, he's already over 1,000. As we all know, Alvin Kamara does a lot of his work through the air. And Jonathan Taylor. So Jay is almost forced to pick these players, in my opinion. He can't go with a Nico Collins. There wasn't enough sample for him to go by there. So he's almost forced to pick these two players. Dak Prescott was the 16th selection in the draft last year by Eric. I understand that was a mistake, but he was selected 16th. J-Ray could also go in that direction. Dak is the 3rd ranked quarterback this season. But Jay had to settle for Dak Prescott. And this lucky streak that Dak's had, I wouldn't say that puts him on a pedestal for next season. I think Dak will still be ranked amongst the 2nd to 3rd tier of quarterbacks, unless this run here late in the season and to the playoffs continues to go. It's just him and CeeDee Lamb consistently. But so far, the Dallas Cowboys look like their strength is at home, and Dak Prescott has always been Dak Prescott. But I have to admit, he has caught quite a streak here, so that's a possibility. But I still think J-Ray will select Jonathan Taylor and Alvin Kamara. Plathanos is the next team here. David Montgomery was selected in the 6th round, and what a year it has been for David Montgomery. He is the 10th ranked running back. He currently has 11 touchdowns, almost about to go over 900 yards. So potentially a 1,000-yard season for him. I think that's a logical selection for Hensel. But what I will say is, well, Hensel made a logical decision this year with Tony Pollard, but that didn't work out. You don't know what's going to happen with David Montgomery with the Detroit Lions, assuming, of course, he sticks with the Detroit Lions. I don't know what his contractual situation is, but let's assume that it's going to be him and Jahmyr Gibbs. Are you so confident that he's going to have this role? I mean, weeks 10 through the current week, he's consistently gotten 12, 15, 18, all carries in the teens here for David Montgomery, even with the emergence of Jahmyr Gibbs. So what's going to be his role for next season? That's the only thing that I would question for Hensel. It's not a promise that he's going to have this sort of consistency, so let's see. The next pick that I suggest for Hensel, and I suggest it because the potential value that he could get for this player is immense. Rashee Rice for the Kansas City Chiefs was drafted in the 12th round by Hensel. Rashee Rice is a real-world talent that has yet to show the fantasy world what he could do. But next season, another year with Patrick Mahomes, let's see what happens in the playoffs, and Rashee Rice could emerge as one of the new stars of the NFL. He's not there yet. He's been showing some potential here and there. He's got a couple of team performances here, got a couple of touchdowns in week 14 and 15, but will he be that number 2 target for Patrick Mahomes at pick number 12 for Hensel? That is great value. And another selection of a consistent player who has pretty much had the season that you expected him to have. Chris Olave is currently the 23rd ranked wide receiver, which is very surprising because he's played throughout most of the season. He only missed 1 game, but when David Carr's your quarterback, I mean, what do you expect? Over 1,000 yards, just 4 touchdowns this season, but so many games over 100 yards. Let's see how many 100-yard games he has. He has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. He has 5 games over 100 yards, a couple games in the 90s. Strong play from Chris Olave. He was Hensel's 3rd pick in the draft. Is that too much? Is that too high? Maybe. That may be too high. There have been a couple of receivers that have maybe jumped ahead of a Chris Olave. I'm thinking of possibly a Puka Nacua. Is he somebody who in drafts could possibly jump ahead of Chris Olave? See, this is where the mock draft helps. That's why the mock draft helps. I mean, I'm blindly making these suggestions now, but when we're doing mock drafts, we can see if a Puka Nacua will be selected ahead of a Chris Olave. Am I overshooting Puka Nacua? I don't know. Maybe that might be the case. I'm not sure. But a Chris Olave in the 3rd round, maybe that's a bit shaky. I'm not sure, but that's a possibility for Hensel. The next unfortunate soul, and so very unfortunate, is Gylander. Gylander has one selection that's a no-brainer. It is a blockbuster discount. He's so fortunate to have this option. But with the free agent selection of Kyren Williams, who is currently the 3rd ranked running back, over 1,000 yards, 9 touchdowns, Kyren Williams, he can select him in the 10th round. That is the default round for free agents. That's obvious. Andy's going to do that. So when you do mock drafts, forget about Kyren Williams. Just skip him because that's not realistic. He's going to be picked somewhere in the 1st round, but in our league, that's not going to be a thing. Andy's next 2 picks, and we again discuss Puka Nacua. Puka Nacua was picked on waivers for Andy, but here's where it gets a bit interesting. I'll refer to paragraph 8 in the league keeper rules made by the commish here. Players that are kept and have the same round designation will be prioritized by who was on the roster first, and the other will cost 1 round less. So in regular terms, Andy selected Puka Nacua first, so Puka Nacua will be his 10th selection, or would be his 10th selection, and Kyren Williams, who was probably picked just a couple of days or the next day, will become Andy's 11th selection. So that's if he doesn't select the next player who he selected in the 4th round, Deebo Samuel. If I had to choose between Puka and Deebo, I would choose Deebo. An entire year of Deebo Samuel, I think, will be more valuable than an entire year of Puka Nacua. This is going to be his sophomore season. You've seen what Deebo can do time and time again. He missed 2 games in this season, was still able to get 6 touchdowns, 5 rushing touchdowns, I believe, if I'm looking at this right. Yes, he got 11 total touchdowns for Deebo Samuel, not quite over the 1,000 yards in the air, but in my opinion, I would make that selection with the 4th round for Andy. But of course, this is my opinion. Ricky O is the next team on the chopping block here. And I'm going to mention a quarterback for the first time here. Lamar Jackson was selected in the 3rd round by Orlando. Here's the case that you can make for Lamar Jackson. Was he inconsistent for the commish this year? Absolutely. As I am saying this, the commish is nodding his head in disappointment. And frankly, I'm experiencing some secondhand disappointment in the commish because Lamar Jackson put him through this. In the middle of the season, he had many low-scoring performances. 2 consecutive weeks with 11, then he followed that up with a 12. He got a 23 in week 11, then he got a 14. A lot of lows for Lamar Jackson, but he was still able to become the 4th ranked quarterback. 3rd round value for a guy who maybe in most drafts will go. Listen, Josh Allen's going first. He's going first in most drafts. Maybe Patrick Mahomes was the first selection. I believe Andy selected him as his 2nd pick. That's not going to happen next season. Patrick Mahomes is probably going to be the 5th or 6th quarterback selected. But Lamar Jackson might be maybe that's where he lands in most drafts, maybe third or fourth behind Josh Allen and the Philadelphia quarterback, Eric's boyfriend. So is that a good selection for Orlando? That's up to him to decide. I don't believe that Orlando failed this season because of the inconsistency of Lamar Jackson. Yes, that was a huge contributor to his failure, but some would argue that the supporting cast just wasn't there, and that just highlighted Lamar's failures a lot more. The next selection for Orlando here is James Cook, who he picked in the 5th round. Now, what I got to say about James Cook is, kind of like David Montgomery, you don't know how the Buffalo Bills are going to utilize him next season. Listen, everything that I'm saying is for most players, with the exception of maybe one or two players who I know for a fact they're not going to play for their teams next season because their team isn't going to afford them. They're not going to pay them. There's only about 2 guys that I'm knowledgeable about that. But for most of these players, I'm assuming they will stay with this team. And James Cook will probably stay with the Bills. I'm just bringing that up just to let you know. You don't even know how the Bills are going to play James Cook this week, let alone next September. So in most drafts, especially after the Week 15 performance of 33 points, in most drafts, I think James Cook will be a top 10 selection. Maybe somewhere, 10, maybe 11, 12 selection, definitely top 15 running back. Is that too high of a pick for Orlando to pick him in the 5th? No. That's probably where he would go in our league. So that might be a wise decision for Orlando. You'd like to have close proximity to any of the strong offenses in the league. So that would be a wise decision to make there. And speaking of strong offenses, DeAndre Swift is another enigma for Ricky O. DeAndre Swift is another up and down player. At the beginning of the season, he was very, very strong. And we spoke again about Orlando's supporting cast. If you look at his numbers from just take your pick from week 8 and down, it's just he's naked. He is freaking naked. He didn't do anything. And he's getting carries. I was just about to give him the benefit of the doubt and say that maybe the team is. No, he's getting carries somewhere in the teens. That's not bell cow numbers, but he's getting carries. So DeAndre Swift may be on the low end of Orlando's possible selections, but it's still there. And honorable mention to Devonta Smith, who was O's 4th pick. But if we want to talk inconsistency, then Devonta Smith, he's right there next to Lamar Jackson. So I think he'll probably go lower next season. Again, there's been some wide receivers who have stepped up. So Devonta Smith, maybe he'll go in the 5th. I'm not quite sure. But we move on to Jokes on You. And Jokes on You is interesting because his potential keepers are players that he acquired via trade. Isaiah Pacheco was drafted in the 7th round by Ewok Rape. Isaiah Pacheco is absolutely Pedro's number 1 keeper. To get Isaiah Pacheco in the 7th round, I don't care. Next season, Patrick Mahomes off or on, they're going to use Pacheco if they're wise. If they want to become a standard offense, just run regular plays like everyone else. Patrick Mahomes is no longer a wizard. They're going to depend on Isaiah Pacheco. With the 7th pick, that is a steal. The next player is Brandon Ayuk, who was acquired through several trades. Originally, he was drafted by Ed in the 6th round. Is Brandon Ayuk worth it? Absolutely. After the bye, after their week 9 bye, it's just he became a double-digit machine, with exception to week 15, where he scored 3, ironically, against the Arizona Cardinals. But Brandon Ayuk is a possible keeper for Pedro. Also selected in the 6th round by Pedro. And I spoke about this a couple of weeks ago during one of the later recaps. I found it strange that Pedro kept Joe Burrow in his IR slot for the whole season. Hold on. Just gotta sip some water. I found it strange that he kept him because in this league, if you don't have the top 3 quarterback, you can just lay off. You can just lay off and see if you get him later on and pay lower of a price. But getting Joe Burrow in the 6th round next season, I don't know. I feel like he would go later. I feel like CJ Stroud moves ahead of him. Some of us may look at Richardson from the Colts, who can do a lot with his legs. Does he move ahead of Joe Burrow, and maybe Pedro could possibly get him in the 7th or in the 8th round? This is all about paying less for players. That's what this is all about. And is it a bargain to get Joe Burrow in the 6th slot? I don't know. I think he could get him a lot later than that. Let's not say a lot. Let me not exaggerate here because Joe Burrow is a bad MFer. But did I just say MFer? God. Joe Burrow is a great quarterback, but I'd argue that maybe a round or 2 later, Pedro can get him. But let's talk about Ewok Rape and his keepers here. Mike Evans selected by Team Body in the 4th round. Mike Evans, who is passed around like a fucking blunt right in front of Paul's face, just passed on. Ed hit it. Eric hit it. Paul didn't get one single hit. He was just there with one tear in his eye. Poor Paul. So sorry. Especially if Eric keeps him, which it could happen, I guess, right? 4th selection, Mike Evans. Has Mike Evans taken a dip this year? I don't think so. In the words of Krillin from Dragon Ball Z, I don't think so. Did Mike Evans? I just want to do an impression of Dragon Ball Z at this way. Just sit through it, all right? Sit through it, all right? Has Mike Evans taken a dip this year? Krillin, I don't think so. I apologize for that. Mike Evans has been a godsend for Ewok Rape. Over 1,000 yards, 13 fucking touchdowns for Mike Evans. I think 4th is a position that Mike Evans could go. I think I got him kind of late. I was surprised to see Mike Evans at the turn of the 4th round. So could he have gone in the 3rd round if Eric doesn't select him? Could he go in the 3rd round? I don't know. Maybe. It's a possibility. Here's where it gets interesting because Eric is maybe the only one of us who should probably stick with his keeper. Jalen Hurts, he selected him in the 6th round, is the 2nd ranked quarterback to Josh Allen. Jalen Hurts, the tush push, it's a thing, right? So Jalen Hurts has 35 collective touchdowns. He has 20 in the air and 15 rushing touchdowns. Granted, most of them are 2-yard touchdowns where he was just pushed along the way, but is he going to get that touchdown production in 2024? Are they going to hate on the tush push? Maybe. I don't know. They're certainly going to discuss it by the end of the season. But Eric should probably make this selection, getting him next year in the 5th round, because Eric is making a 2nd selection, so he would then move up a round, so he would have to pay 1 more. So getting him in the 5th round for what's going to be the 2nd ranked quarterback, that's a steal. I would go as far as to say that Eric is absolutely going to select Jalen Hurts, as sure as I am that Pedro is going to select Isaiah Pacheco. I think you could just make that a thing. I think Eric just has to decide between Mike Evans and Pedro's 2023 keeper selection, Jalen Waddle, selected in the 7th round. So make a decision. Get Mike Evans in the 4th round or wait a little bit and get Jalen Waddle. I mean, you can still select Mike Evans. That's the thing. You can still select Mike Evans in the 4th round and just pick up Jalen Waddle in the 7th. I guess, right? let's discuss Joelicus Maximus. Joelicus Maximus. I guess Joe likes Gladiator. You know, one time Joe and I were having a conversation. Gladiator came up and I told him, I said, you know, in that scene when he turns around and he shows his face to Commodus, you know, he says he's like the commander of the Felix regions. You know that, right? And he was like, no, what? Yeah, we went to the YouTubes and confirmed it. Go ahead and listen to that speech when he turns around and says, I'm Maximus Aurelius, commander of the Felix regions, and I will have my vengeance in this lifetime or the next. Okay, so Michael Pittman Jr., selected in the 11th round by Team Bundy, will be one of Joe's keepers. It has to be. He has to be one of your keepers. Michael Pittman is so dependable. He is that guy. Similar numbers to the to Chris Olave that we were discussing just a few minutes ago. Similar numbers, just a few 100-yard performances, some performances in the 90s. How many touchdowns does he have? He has 4 touchdowns. Unfortunately, missed a game this season. Michael Pittman Jr. is a steal in the 11th round. He is going to shoot up, I think, in most drafts, probably in the 8th. Definitely not in the 11th, so that is a steal for Joe. Devin Achane is, I don't know on this one. You know, Achane showed you that he is, you know, he's quite possibly a generational talent at the beginning of the season. A 200-yard game against the Denver Broncos. Let's ride. 47 points in that game. That was just ridiculous. Just 8 carries the next week, and he got 23 points. He has the ability to just get like 4 carries and still rack up points here. Getting Achane in the 11th round, that's where he was selected by Jay. As you know, paragraph 8 of the rules states that whoever's on the team first, the other one will be picked a round later. So that would be Pittman. Pittman would be selected in the 12th round, and Achane would be in the 11th. Those are 2 players that could be possible league winners for Joe next season, if not for the second pick that maybe should be repeated. Jalen Hurts for Eric, and CeeDee Lamb may be for Eric. I mean, if we want to talk about 2023 keepers, these are the 2 that are contending for Keeper of the Year, if that's such an award. Eric has the advantage because Jalen Hurts is a quarterback. The offense runs through him, but CeeDee Lamb is the second-ranked wide receiver. He's got 9 touchdowns, 14 hundo yards. 14 hundo yards in the air. An absolute savage. Joe selects him. He picked him in the 3rd. He kept him in the 3rd, so he would potentially be selecting him in the 2nd round next year. Too high a price? I don't know. Maybe he would go in the 3rd again. I don't know. 2nd or 3rd, one or the other. But the Achane is something that's like an opportunity that he's got to jump on. If you want to say Michael Pittman, he's not worth it, fine. Then don't pick Michael Pittman, even though I think you should. But yeah, I think those should be Joe's 2 selections. I think it should just be Achane and it should be Michael Pittman. Picking up a strong RB2, a wide receiver 2 in the 12th round. I mean, come on. You have to do that. Now we're going to discuss the team that quite possibly has the toughest choices to make here. And it comes because of his obsession, his addiction to young players. And that, of course, is Zach Wilson, who has plenty of players to select from here. CJ Stroud, Ed picked him up on waivers. CJ Stroud, potentially the 10th round selection. Tank Dell was selected via free agency by, by Eric. Who was the first person to pick up Tank Dell? First person to pick up Tank Dell was Big Papa Pooh. Ooh, Devin Achane, Tank Dell. Jay's got some regrets this season. Then eventually he was picked up by Ewok Rape October 15th, and then Eric traded him over to Ed about a month later. It's a really good idea to stack these two players up. I mean, to select both of them and then the next year, let's say 2025. I mean, that's a dynasty right there. You know, both of them then in the 9th and then in the 10th for CJ Stroud and Tank Dell, to stack those two up as a Hydra. Are they a Hydra? Nico Collins is there. There's another guy. I forgot what his name is, but there's some potential there. Garrett Wilson, who was his 2023 keeper. Now, Garrett Wilson has he's got the benefit of having Aaron Rodgers as his quarterback for 2024, right? One would assume he's not going to get hurt in 4 plays. Ed could go with him. He kept him in the 10th round. He would be picking him in the 9th next season. And then there's Breece Hall, who Ed selected in the 5th round. Now, Breece Hall, I think, I'm just mentioning him, but I don't think Ed should take him as a keeper. He would probably go earlier than that, maybe in the 3rd or 4th. I think he'd go a bit high because the potential is there. But I don't think he should pick Breece Hall. I just think that he could make that pickup anyway. He's going to have one of the lottery picks. I certainly don't think he should pick him up with his first pick. Definitely not. And another thing that Ed shouldn't do is go with 2 Jets. Don't do it. Please don't do it. If one of us goes in, then we all go through it. See, Ed, I gave you some Drake bars. If that convinces you. Don't do it. Because if you select both of these Jets, you know he's just going to pick Aaron Rodgers again. But no, I'll lock in one person and say that Ed is definitely going to select CJ Stroud. Picking up CJ Stroud in the 10th round when, if not kept, I think he could go in this league in the 5th or 6th. Definitely ahead of Joe Burrow. That's why I wouldn't make the pick that Pedro can make. But I'd say that CJ Stroud is the only guarantee for Ed. Maybe a combination of a Texan and a Jet. Maybe staying with Garrett Wilson and CJ Stroud, or maybe going with 2 wide receivers. I'm not sure, but CJ Stroud, I've got a feeling that Ed would definitely pick him for the 2024 draft. So the last team that we have on the docket here is Pork Chop Express. Now, Pork Chop Express has a very unsexy or not sexy keeper situation here. Raheem Mostert would certainly be his number 1 pick here, though Raheem Mostert will be turning 32 next April. I mean, that's pretty old in running back years. He was the 9th selection. Again, with these questions, what is the offense going to look like for Miami? Is Raheem Mostert going to stay on the Miami Dolphins? We don't know. What's going to be the relationship between him and Achane? That's up in the air. So maybe, just maybe, this next player, who I know for certain will not stay with his team because he's going to get paid big bucks, T. Higgins, selected in the 4th round, can go to another team and become the premier wide receiver. But picking him in the 4th round, is that a bit too high? When you have so much else to look for within the wide receivers next year, is the 4th pick too high for Paul? And Travis Kelce, who I doubt, that something just tells me like no. Why would Paul pick up Travis Kelce after the season that he had? After he has shown himself to be a shill. A fucking shill. I saw that link that Jay put up about him getting paid like $20 million to support the vaccine. Listen, stuff like that triggers me. And now, him coming together with Taylor Swift, it just takes on a completely different look. What's happening to Travis Kelce, I don't know. But since the week 10 bye, and even before that, since week 8, Travis Kelce has put up single-digit numbers. Sometimes scoring in the 80s or 90s, when it comes to yardage. But still, Just 9s and 8s. That's all he's putting up. Why would Paul keep him in the 3rd round now in 2023 and then go up one more round to get him in the 2nd? That's not going to happen. Paul's not selecting Travis Kelce with the 2nd pick. That's not going to happen. He could pick him up in the 3rd round. I still think that Travis Kelce is the number 1 tight end. You don't just fall off after one season. This is, there's too much going on with the Chiefs offense. I'm not going to say that Travis Kelce has officially fallen off. It's just a tight end position. You could be slow as fuck and still be the 3rd ranked guy. So I'd say that Paul could pick him in the 3rd round, but not in the 2nd. So last here is Team Bundy. I would know who I'm going to pick as a keeper, don't I? I would know that. I would know the answer to that. The only realistic decisions for me to make here, me to look at, is Josh Allen, selected in the 3rd round by Team Bundy. Rachaad White, selected in the 5th round by Joelicus Maximus. We made that amazing trade. Joe getting Michael Pittman Jr. and me getting Rachaad White. DK Metcalf will not be the keeper for us next season. Not because he hasn't done well. He had a strong season towards the end. I could only wish that he would have had these stats in the middle of the season. I prefer a player to play good in the middle. In the middle is when it's really important. And in the middle of the season, he just went nowhere for me. But towards the end here, he's been racking up some points. But I will not be selecting him because he ain't worth the 4th. Okay, I picked him in the 5th. I kept him in the 5th. He is not worth the 4th. And any other options here? No. Nobody else that I see as a realistic selection here other than maybe a Mark Andrews, who I have kept in the IR slot because of the possibility of him being a keeper. Yes, I could pick Mark Andrews because I got him in the 6th round. Picking up Mark Andrews in the 6th, he will go earlier than that, I think. I don't know how he fell to the 6th round here, but I got him nonetheless. But you can expect that those will be the 3 players that I'll be thinking about. Not going to say what to. Those are the advices that I am giving to you. Take my advices and hold them close to your heart.